It is my honor and privilege to introduce you to Victor Voss. Victor Voss is a digital entrepreneur who built a $30 million plus business starting with just $300. He teaches aspiring founders how to launch and scale direct to consumer products without fluff, hype, or social media gimmicks, just clear, actionable steps that get results. The internet tells entrepreneurs to hustle harder, but what if the real key to explosive growth was doing fewer things better? In this focused session, Victor Voss shares with us the systems, mindset, and optimization that helped him scale from 300 to over $30 million in revenue without burnout, constant content creation, or a single social media post. Learn how to cut the noise, reclaim your time, and build a business that fails fast. Thank you so much for being here, Victor.
You definitely make me sound better than I actually am.
Well, this is pretty impressive. So, right out the gate, I'm going to ask you, you scaled from $300 to $30 million without the hustle culture, without a team, without social media, and these are all of the things that they tell you need. So, what was the very first step that you took, and how did you make that first sale?
Let me be clear. First of all, I didn't have a team. I have a team now.
Wow.
So you definitely don't go all the way with no team. I don't want to make
Got it.
myself sound like Superman or something. But yes, when I started, I had nothing. I was thankful to be eating 3 square meals a day. At the time, I was doing email marketing automation as a freelance gig, and I was working automation. So I've always been a big believer in automation because it saves time. And this was back before AI or anything like that existed. Zapier was brand new. I was actually one of the very early adopters for Zapier back then. So I was armed with some knowledge of automation. I had previously worked doing some consulting with a SMB accelerator type program out of Australia. And one of the things that they were big on was being efficient with time, which is so often overlooked. I didn't even know hustle culture existed back then. I don't know that it was so much of a thing then. We're talking about 8 years ago. That was before TikTok. That was before a lot of this stuff got hyper glorified. I don't know if side hustle was really a term back then either. I didn't go in with any kind of mindset or any kind of preconceived work harder, not smarter. I've always been a work smarter, not harder kind of guy. So that's part of the reason why I love digital marketing. It means I don't have to be crawling under diesel engines or something, you know. My dad growing up, I was like, don't want to be that. But in terms of working hard, and nothing wrong with hard work, but I want my work to scale. And
I love it.
I had an idea for a niche product and don't know anything about the space. And you don't need to. That's one of the things I make clear in my book. You go into this with no idea. You don't need an idea. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to. You just need to have one product, one solution, one target audience, and niche down, not up. And so that's really what I did. It's a hyper niche product. It is a recurring revenue model. And I knew exactly where to go to find my target audience, down to the exact subreddits. And that's what I did. This was when Reddit only offered text only ads. So I got my started doing pre orders because I didn't have enough money to launch this thing without pre orders. But now I know better looking back. I'm like, that's an awesome demand test as well. I started my pre orders very cheap. I'm talking like pennies, Reddit ads. And yeah,
Wow.
that's how I got started. So I built a landing page myself using a WYSIWYG editor, WP Bakery for WordPress. No, I don't recommend WordPress anymore, but that's what I had then.
Right.
And kind of the rest is history. So I didn't do a lot on social media either. I'm not a fan. I don't use it personally. I'm not saying that there's not benefits to using it. If you're in a women's centric brand, for example, you pretty much have to have it. But mine wasn't. And that being said, we have social media channels now. I don't manage them, but how I scaled up was paid traffic and good automation, email, SMS. I was one of the very first users of MiniChat, which I'm not sure if you've heard of, but it's an automation platform for Facebook Messenger and now WhatsApp. So I was a heavy MiniChat user when Facebook first rolled out. I think it was 2018 Messenger automation. That was before they put any guardrails on it or any other kind of restrictions. Of course, now it's heavily pay to play. But back then it was basically like using email automation in Messenger. They had very
Wow.
little rules. So at one point, my bots were sending out like thousands of messages per minute because I built all these gamified systems. So people were playing games with my bot and just sucked people in. I had all these little achievements they could earn and stuff like that. It's all digital.
Wow.
I built upon the classic systems that are now everybody has them in terms of gamification, tactical stuff based on automation that would scale. And I was very careful to lay the groundwork because one of the things I feel that small to medium business owners don't think about is okay, imagine if where you are right now and if you multiplied the amount of customers you have by 5 or 10 or 100, what will happen to your logistics, your systems, your infrastructure, your fulfillment. Will it scale? If it won't scale, you need to go fix that foundational problem first. Because if you can't throw fuel on the fire and have it scale and have everything scale with it, you have a problem if you can't do that. So
Wow.
I did that first, and then I added the fuel because I had seen way too many businesses hire me. I add the fuel, and I caused everything else to collapse. They would come to me and say, I want to double my customers. I would effectively do it. The problem is that maybe they didn't have the customer support or the infrastructure or the fulfillment or the whatever, something broke.
Wow.
And then a lot of times it would break critically, and then I'd be out of a job or I'd be out of a client. So,
Holy cow.
so I learned from that. I was like, I'm not going to be that.
This is all
So
amazing, wonderful information. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if you don't mind my asking, you said that you niched way down. What was it that you ended up with?
So it's a subscription box product. It's just in a sub niche of a niche, you could say. It's a very narrow product. At this point, my company is working on adjacent products because we've pretty much maxed out the market cap
Wow.
for that particular product. It's quite lucrative, obviously, because no one was serving it. That was a completely unserved market. And while it's somewhat rare to find those, and it's not required to find those to make money, but I knew exactly how to speak to them. And this can work in what would be normally considered a more mainstream product too. For example, let's say you want to come up with a fitness product. It's a huge industry. There's many products, many players, et cetera. But you can still niche down. So for example, rather than saying my product helps you put on muscle, you can say my product helps skinny hard gainers put 2 inches on their biceps in 8 weeks.
Hmm.
That's hyper specific. That's solving a specific problem for a
Wow.
specific person in a specific time frame.
I love it.
It's much more specific, and that's where you are going to succeed, or where anyone is going to succeed. Now, if you have something very small like that, you might have a very small market cap, but then you're already successful, so you can start going adjacent. You can repurpose it. You can say it helps senior citizens build overall muscle mass for increased HGH in 8 weeks, or something like that. It's similar, and so you just start kind of adjacent products adding on. For anybody that's getting started, definitely hyper specific, because you also know exactly how to speak to them. You have this very narrow cross section, and you just zero in on it.
I love it. I love it.
So,
Wow. Amazing. A lot of people have ideas, but they don't know if they're going to work or not. So what is your go-to method for validating a business idea before building anything?
it depends on, are you talking physical or digital? So you definitely want to what I call demand test. You want to make sure people are going to give you money for that. Whether it is a landing page where you don't even have a checkout system and you just drive some traffic and you just track clicks on the checkout button. I outline some of this in my book. I'm like, what kind of percentages on the conversion rates you're looking for to have a viable product. Or you can do pre-orders like with what I did, because it was a physical product. I needed the capital I had to reach a critical mass to be able to start production. Or if it's a digital product, you can still pre-order a digital product and then put it together if you start seeing the results. Throw together something simple, like just a send out account or something like that, where you can just share a checkout link. You don't have to even build a website or even a landing page, really. If you're already active in a community, like this, highly recommend a lot of times is think about where you're already active, where you already have skill sets, where you already can solve a problem. Most people know something, right? Once you start seeing a recurring problem or a recurring theme, if you already know the space, you can come up with a solution for that. It can even just be like a 1 or 2 page questionnaire or a mini guide
Wow.
PDF or whatever. And you throw something together, even if it's $1.99 or $3.99 or something, and just see if people will buy it. If
Okay. I
you
love it.
start getting bites, then you know you're onto something, and you can scale it up, turn it into something larger, or a course, or a paid newsletter, or community. The sky's the limit. There's a lot of platforms out there now. There's plenty of people on TikTok and stuff like that. They're like, you can do all this and you can be making money online in 10 minutes. You can't open a bank account in 10 minutes. So like,
Yes, exactly.
um,
I
there's a
kind of stay
lot of
away from
people
those
that'll,
people.
right. Yeah. 20 people tell you what you want to hear.
Mhm.
I always say I'm allergic to BS. Like
Mhm.
I've done it. I've done it for nothing. I know what it takes and I know what it doesn't take. And
Wow.
I'm in this just because I like to talk about marketing and trying to pay it forward. So,
Love it. Love it. So awesome.
um,
You mentioned doing fewer things better. What are some of the things that you have actively stopped doing to free up some of your time and energy?
so I wouldn't waste time with SEO. If you,
Wow.
yeah, if you're starting out, I wouldn't waste time with SEO. I really wouldn't waste time with content marketing. I wouldn't waste a lot of time with social media unless it's a woman-centric product and something that's like a beauty product or something like that. And social media makes sense. I personally always recommend staying away from non-direct response type efforts
Mm.
until you have scaled up enough to justify that, until you basically can hire other people, or even if it's just a VA with AI or something like that. I don't mean go out and have an expensive team, but you need to, your initial bang and your initial scale is going to come mainly from paid traffic. You always
Okay.
hear about these outliers, but that's what they are. They're outliers. Oh, I went viral, or this person went viral, or they happen to rank and get a ton of organic. You can't control that. That's like trying to win the lottery. I mean, somebody wins the lottery, yes, but
Yes.
statistically, it's a bad investment. And I still say that for the vast majority of people that ask me things, or I'm consulting, or just in general. I'm like, stop trying to chase the SERPs. Stop trying to hit a viral social media post. Concentrate on money in, money out. You're spending $1 and you're getting back $2, and your cost of goods. Look for that ROAS, return on ad spend, and then automate, which goes into the time hacking and all that. Automate everything you possibly can. So capture that lead and have all the automation to back it up. The nurture, the welcome series, the SMS, all the stuff that you need to have, because you have to lay a solid foundation. You don't spend money on ads until you have a solid automation foundation. You need to have this. It's just not going to work otherwise. Now, there are a lot of ways to make 5 figures a month online. And there's a decent amount of ways to make maybe 6 figures a year online. But whenever you're talking about 7, 8 figures a year, there's not a lot of people that make it to that level. And the people that do are heavily involved in automation. There's no other way to handle that volume.
Wow.
So, just as a super specific example, one of the funnels I made was when someone hit my landing page, instead of having the typical capture pop up, which has like a 2% conversion rate, I did a slide in quiz.
Okay.
It had a question where it would ask them, basically, it would say, I have something for you. And it was like, oh, really? Like the internet meme. And then it worked with the audience. It doesn't work with every audience, but you can find your own. So the next step was, here's what I have for you. And then it asked them about themselves. Basically, it got them involved, and it was multi-step. So that triggers engagement heuristic. There's some research that demonstrates that once people are committed, they're more likely to remain committed. So after they filled out the survey, sent to my email automation platform and SMS automation platform, deliver them their free items right away. And then I got them. So then I have a welcome series, and it's a 7-day series of giving them free stuff, basically, because there's a psychological heuristic reciprocity. So if you're giving people more than they expect to get for free, they're much more likely to purchase from you. They get a lot of free stuff there. And then there's some segmentations for them. It asks them to take another survey, tell us what they like, and then branch from there. And then it's a lot of automation and logic. And yeah, it's a lift to build it, but you only have to build it one time. Then you can tweak it and optimize it going forward, but it just sits there and works. So whether you're capturing 100 leads or 100,000, it's still doing its job, hopefully making you money 24/7. So I'm surprised how this stuff has existed a long time, but I'm surprised how many people still struggle with a lot of this automation stuff. At Time Hackers, especially, it's relevant having all this.
And for somebody who is starting out, what would your advice be on how to prioritize their time and avoid feeling overwhelmed or burnt out?
It's definitely easy to feel overwhelmed. Stop looking at social media first, and then figure out the 80/20 rule. So most of us in marketing should be familiar with Pareto's principle, or the 80/20 rule, the rule that the 20% yields 80%. For example, the top 20% of your customers make up 80% of the customer revenue or total business revenue. It's not always exactly, but it's close enough to matter. So start looking at that. I'm assuming that people are already making some sales and doing some stuff. So look at your top 20% of customers and start seeing where they came from, and then start doubling down there. Track your time. I like to work on the Pomodoro method, and a 25-minute timer. You do one thing, because multitasking doesn't really work. Don't do that. So yeah, track your time. Take a look at where you currently are. Figure out how you got there, who your top 20% are, where they came from, and how can you find more people like them. And then avoid social media and other things that are just going to drag you down or proven to be psychologically detrimental. Quit drinking so much. So,
Got it. Can you walk us through an automation system that had the biggest impact on your ability to scale without burning out?
yeah. So actually, in the early days, it's always fun to talk about the stuff that's bringing in the revenue, right? But in the early days for me, I had a lot of trouble finding a good customer service rep. I don't have the customer service gene. So it was a big problem, right? Because this was a highly reactive audience. Somebody needed to get back to them super fast, or they were going to flip out, cancel, write bad stuff online. It was a problem. So this was before AI. Obviously, AI makes customer service vastly easier now. But platforms have the autoresponder and things like that. But I built where they could actually get the autoresponder email, and then they would get a list of questions, and it would route them to a survey where it was a type form. I used the heck out of type form. They write on a type form where they could basically talk their way through the problem. Because remember, there's no
Wow.
AI. This was 8 years ago. So the help desk platforms that I could afford were seriously lacking because I didn't have any money. So they walked themselves through a type form with what the issue was. It tried to help them. I had logic. So it was like, okay, if they selected this, then okay, we'll go here. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, then. And it let them feel that there was progress being made. I was constantly reinforcing that it's like, we got your message. We're going to get back to you as soon as we can, but try this while you're waiting. It wasn't like, try this
Wow.
first. So I didn't trigger them. It was
Uh-huh.
like, well, while you're waiting, even though it wasn't a real bot, we called it that. And so they would feel like they were quasi talking to it. I played into the fact that it was like clearly not a person, but still trying to help them.
Okay. So they knew that they were talking to a bot.
Yeah, because it wasn't even like back and forth live chat. It was just like next, 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 next
I
kind of a
see.
thing with some
Okay.
branching logic. It was the best I could do back then.
Okay. Very cool.
But it really helped calm them down by the time they got through that. Even if they didn't self help, they were like, okay, well, they're really trying here. And that helped prevent knee jerk cancellations and stuff like that. So,
Wow. I mean,
but always be thinking about that. There's so much automation options in everything now, whether it's customer service, whether it's marketing. So be using them. And most of those platforms are quite affordable, and especially on the smaller end of the scale spectrum. So if you do something more than once, see if you can automate it. Is one of the things that I say.
and would you recommend somebody using a chat bot now? Kind of
Oh
a
yeah,
AI
for
in marketing?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, when they're trained right, especially, they're fantastic. I mean, they can solve so much stuff. Just make sure you put in the front end time to teach it correctly, or if you don't already have the existing FAQs and knowledge base and etc. Of course, if you're using something like Shopify or whatever, it's already going to know how to help them with their account and stuff like that. But if you have something that's more specific, and if you're like larger and you're doing something that's hyper technical, you can build your own agent. There are tools out there that help you build your own agents, and then you just
Very
train
cool.
them on your knowledge base and then get them up to speed. I was on a podcast with a human op, and they built an AI agent that solves the vast majority of all customer problems before they ever have to reach a human. Now,
Nice.
they had to build their own, but they did it and it works very well.
Okay. And you mentioned you don't use social media. So what would you recommend for somebody trying to build their audience?
I'm not knocking social media for marketing purposes, although I feel like it's vastly overrated, especially in the early
Mhm.
days. But go where they are. Don't think linearly in terms of maybe they're at brick and mortar. I don't know. Again, to go back to the fitness product, maybe you can start calling up gyms and being like, "Can I put my flyers in your gym and I'll have a QR code and you'll get a cut of everybody that scans." I
Wow.
think guerrilla style, the guerrilla marketing is the old term. Just go where they are. It doesn't have to be online, but it can be. And for example, if you do think that social media is potentially lucrative, or maybe there's some big names, obviously there's a lot of big names on the fitness space on social media. So reach out, do collaborations or
Wow.
what have you, go to fitness conventions. There's so many different paths you can take. It really depends on what you're selling, who you're selling to, who's your target audience, and what kind of resources you're starting out with. If you're starting out with nothing, you have to get creative. And there's nothing wrong with starting out with nothing. And it's perfectly possible to go nothing to something. It's just you have your work cut out for you, and it's going to take work. So that's where it's going to take both. It's going to take being smart and efficient with your time and hard work.
How do you handle shiny object syndrome, especially when it comes to all of the different marketing tactics, all the tools, all the automations that you could be using,
Oh,
all of the AI stuff that we have out now? There's just so many different directions you can go in. How do you keep yourself in tune with what you need to be doing?
I totally have that problem too. I have like 100 companies I want to start.
Right?
That's really a question. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs, it's just natural. We're always going to struggle with that a little bit because this is the kind of mindset that gets involved in this kind of thing. But for example, one of the things I've been doing lately is going back to what I know works and what has really moved the needle for me repeatedly, which is demand testing, pre orders, leaning heavily onto FOMO, exclusivity, fear of missing out, exclusivity, building community. I'm basically stepping through heuristics here, subconscious human behaviors that marketers need to know. I wrote a guide about this. It's 11 different marketing psychology principles that I feel like marketers need to know. Basically, build a community around your pre-order event because people want to feel included. If you give them a say in what you're making, they're more likely to buy it. So that's a core principle of everything that I still do. I still let the customers have some kind of impact on the final product. As long as I stay committed to what I know works, it helps keep me from going out in left field too far. That makes sense. Just using tools to accelerate what I already know works. So, for example, using AI. The way that we use AI in my company, we have a Teams plan and we just fed everything into it about the company, all of our SOPs, all of our FAQs, all of our website copy, all of our email copy, gave it everything. You have to be able to write like this. Here's our target audience. I just brain dumped into it for like
Wow.
3 or 4 days straight, just everything I knew about my target audience and couldn't think of. And so then it's much more effective at time savings. I know I need to have this like multi-email sequence, and I can be like, write me the email sequence that I need to have, ideal timing. I'll go back and forth with it. I poke it a lot to make sure it's basing its decisions on proven psychological concepts or real psychological studies. If you know what works, stick to it and just use the tools to accelerate that or to simplify it or to automate it. And that'll help hopefully keep you in center lane moving forward.
If you could go back in time 8 years ago, what advice would you give yourself, and what mistake or mistakes would you try to keep yourself from making again?
I definitely have made a lot of mistakes, wasted a lot of money, but that's also how you learn. Like
Yeah.
one of the things I say is it's impossible to fail forever because people will say, well, what if it fails? You will. That's a silly question. I mean, eventually you'll have failed enough to where you don't fail.
I love it.
So the one thing that I would probably say is try to keep your team size small. A lot of us internet entrepreneurs, or at least myself, don't have an HR background. Running a larger team wasn't my strong suit at all. And now I'm very grateful for the team that I have. Very tight knit. They've all been with me years now, but it was so much effort to get there. I didn't know about hiring, about managing, about anything like that. And now there's so many automation tools and stuff like that, time saving things. My suggestion now is create good SOPs or standard operating procedures and try to even just get VAs or something to use AI or automation and just lean heavily into that as opposed to trying to build out these larger teams, at least at first, because they're unwieldy. That's kind of the advice that I would give myself personally. A lot of the other mistakes that I've made are just mistakes that I kind of had to make or were related to just trying adjacent stuff that just didn't work. Okay, here's another piece of advice. Make sure you don't become your own cheerleader. In other words, just because you hit on success doesn't mean your next plan is going to succeed. I had this ego thing going on a little bit, like it's totally going to work. I know it's going to work because it's already worked. Didn't work. So you still do the demand test is my point. Don't spend too much money until you've done the demand test. Here's an example. My company purchased an adjacent company, a small adjacent company, similar concept, different audience, different product, but similar recurring subscription box type product. They had a customer base. The guy was overwhelmed because he was getting too many orders. He didn't have the mindset for scaling up and he wanted out.
Wow.
And so we bought it. We're now a little bit larger company. We can't just throw something out there that looks half-assed or something. We had to invest some money and some time and hire a manager. And we thought we didn't have to demand test it basically because the guy was already succeeding. So we put probably around 100 grand into the hiring and just everything you had to do to get ready. It was a back burner project for a long time. So it ended up taking quite a while. And then it totally flopped. Like it turned out that there was just no scalability. It had very small hardcore audience and nobody else wanted it.
Wow.
Had to basically kill it. So you live and learn. But my ultimate advice is just do it. You got to tune out everything and everyone and just go for it and fail until you succeed.
Mm.
So
Wow. That's great advice. Thank you for
I've
that.
been failing since I was 6. So it took me a long time and a lot of fails. I got a Lyft ride one time, and while the guy was driving me, he was asking me what I do, and I was like, I have a direct consumer product company, and he's like, wow, what does it take? And I was like, let me tell you. And by the time I got to our destination, he's like, man, I'm glad I drive Lyfts. I don't want to do what you do. So, yeah, not for
That's not
everyone,
for
but
everybody.
yeah.
That's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Well, what if somebody is just starting out, or maybe they're doing the side hustle and they only have 5 to 10 hours a week to focus to work on their business? What would you say to that person on what they should be focusing on to get progress the quickest?
Find something very specific, like I was saying, a specific problem for a specific person in a specific area. The more specific, the better. And demand test it. You have to see if you can get people to click buy. Whether or not you set something up that's super simple, like Sendal, and you just have a buy it now link or a Facebook or TikTok shop or whatever it is, just see if someone will buy it or sign up for the pre-order or whatever it is. There's nothing wrong with demand testing a couple of things. I had a product that I invested quite a lot of work into I knew it had a potential to succeed because it was very similar to a lot of other products in the space. I had a really nice professional video made for it. I partnered with a very popular podcaster. I did everything right, and it totally bombed.
Mm,
But then my next product became the company that I have now.
wow.
So my point is try more than one product because you don't know what's going to work. And don't grow emotionally attached to anything until you've proven it to work. Let the numbers tell you. Let the numbers tell you what to do, not your feelings. So
Yeah.
uh, because
Where
I
did
would have much rather have worked in that other niche than the one I ended up in from a personality perspective and have a lot more knowledge of that other niche. It's ironic. Like I knew much more about the other space,
wow.
but there's the saying, don't do your own product. I say, don't try to make your hobby into a business.
Huh.
It won't,
Interesting.
because when I say business, I mean scale. And I'm not knocking people that want to make side hustles. But the point is, when I say the word business, I mean a scaled up business. I don't mean a couple of grand a month or something like that. I'm talking a full team, maybe 6, 7 figures a year minimum. You just can't get there with emotional involvement. This is what actually held back a lot of SMBs that I've consulted with. The owners put too much emotional attachment to money. Like they see everything as money. I see everything as a math game. To me, it's all just a math game. The math works or the math doesn't work. The investment is there or the return on investment is there or it's not there. That's it. I don't get caught up in I could have bought this instead I spent it on the marketing that didn't work or whatever. No, you have to make an investment in your company.
Let
Point
me ask
is,
you this follow-up question. Do you think that same advice holds true whether it's a physical product or a digital product, possibly even services?
oh yes, so digital products so much easier to demand test now because you have stuff like
Oh,
Printify. I
oh,
mean, the
okay.
margin might not be there for scale, and it probably won't be, but that doesn't matter for a demand test. If you have an idea and you want to make a product and you think it'll work, let's say you can make some really hilarious phone cases for people that love Minecraft. Again, specific.
Mhm.
Easy to do on Printify. Go make a couple of phone cases or go do the little design, make a buy link, and see if anyone on your Minecraft server will buy them. Maybe everyone thinks your Minecraft cases suck and no one buys them. And okay, you didn't have to go make a minimum order quantity of 10,000 cases before you used to have.
Right.
So you can demand test whether it's physical or digital for sure. And then services, that's an interesting one. Actually, I was talking to a company about cleaning services, and you'd be surprised about what people in the US take for granted because there's quite a bit of competition. It's kind of an open market, free market competition is kind of ingrained in our DNA as Americans. But other countries aren't like that. A lot of times it's like, well, we've always done things this way and this is how things are. There hasn't been a lot of disruption. And so this was a cleaning company. And I knew for a fact that it was probably going to be a great idea because I was like, I'd hire the heck out of your company because I'm so tired of dealing with this crap from every other company that offers your services because they're like they only do things this way because that's how everyone's always done them and it's terrible. So I told the lady that came up with the idea, go to the higher end condos that are going to be your potential target audience, put a bunch of flyers in there, be like, hey, here's the new service, you can get a free consultation, but you can't actually get your service started until at least this date because we're so busy. So then you get the we're in demand hook, you get the
Oh,
demand test, you get the pre-order technically, and it's a real face-to-face service industry. And so that's what I suggested to her I would do. Because she was kind of in the same position, starting with very little capital. And I was like, well, just go get 10, 20 people signed on before you ever pull the trigger on any expenses. And if nobody calls you, well, then you know that no one's interested. Or maybe they'll call you and they'll also say, hey, can you do it like this? Because I had to pivot my company very early on too, because although I had a product dialed in, I had the niche dialed in, what the niche wanted was actually different than the way that I was positioning it. They didn't care about the way I was positioning it. They wanted their products to be exactly a specific way that they specified. So I pivoted because you got to be willing to roll with new information because in her case, for example, the problem she was really focusing on may have been less important than another problem that she didn't think about. But that
interesting.
when they called her, they might have told her that. And then she'd be like, okay, my next batch of flyers from my next condo building will focus on this new problem. And maybe she'd get a better call ratio. I was like, pass out 1,000 flyers and you can get trackable numbers and all that. So you could figure out your conversion rate and everything from every batch of flyers. So just being strategic about everything is important.
Love it. Wow. So much
Mm.
great advice. Thank you so much.
And hopefully I help out somebody. So I learned it all the hard way. So now I'm just like, well, if I can help somebody a little bit, then
I love it.
um,
I love it. You also have a couple of gifts. The first one is the player's shortcut. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep. So it's a super condensed version, a little bit less actionable because it's so condensed of my larger book, but it's just based on the overall concepts, sort of what we've been talking about in terms of how to go from no idea to making some money online, making your first order online, and the mindset, the thought process to step your way through that, the actual nitty gritty, tangible, actionable stuff. Obviously, it takes my book to explain because it's a little bit more in depth. It's a free guide. So
Beautiful.
if anyone goes to my website and they can just pop an email, they'll get that. They'll get a second guide that talks more about nutrition, brain hack type stuff
Oh,
because
wow.
you got to have good focus. I take a very holistic view of going at this, right? Because you have to have it all to be able to go all in. It's a lot of focus, it's a lot of commitment, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of being stubborn, it's a lot of never giving up. And if you're not all there, it's going to be more difficult. Why make the uphill run even more uphill, basically? I also have a quasi professional sports background. And so stuff I picked up from there. There's a crash course, a
Wow.
7-day email crash course about stepping your way into the mindset and different actions and actionable things. And then after that, about every 3 days, an email fires out with super actionable advice. I picked the term player. It's not like chasing girls or something. It's because you're playing the game. And when you're playing a game, it's a lot more than just one thing to win. And so I have these, what I call the 4 pillars, and then each of them has things underneath them for
Wow.
different actionable ways to do mindset, energy, focus. I mean, to be a successful entrepreneur is a lot of focus. You have to block out a lot and you have to stay locked in. And it's a skill. It's not only a skill, but it's supported by a lot of other things. Your body, your brain, how much time you spent practicing, the environment that you're in. There's so many factors that go into play. There's so many little things that can help give you an edge. And whenever you're trying to go nothing to something, you need all the edges you can get.
For sure.
And all of this stuff coalescing together for me is what got me where I am. But it took me 2 decades plus to learn it all. And so now I try to accelerate what took me years or decades can now be learned in months. I mean, just having all this information at your fingertips. I try to make everything, all my stuff is super actionable. It's like no BS. If you want motivational speak or fluff, you're not going to like my stuff. It's like hyper direct. It's in your face. Like, this is what it's going to take. And I know because I did it. It's maybe not for everybody,
I
but
love it.
I can say that it works because it did. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So you can download the player's shortcut, How I Built a $30 million Empire and How You Can Too, a free guide at victorvoss.com. And you also have one more gift for people who upgrade to VIP called the Player's Fuel Cheat Sheet. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
yep, that's a super crash course in optimizing your focus and energy through your nutrition.
Oh, okay.
So primarily like what you can quickly cut out and replace it with to get instant energy and focus bumps and start feeling better.
Get rid of the
Uh,
brain fog.
yeah. Oh, especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that. Help sleep, help wake up, help stay locked in. And yes, definitely not having brain fog. I have a larger book on the similar topic. My emails have some of this stuff for free about nootropics and mental performance optimization and stuff like that. It's another one of my areas that I really liked.
So what do you mean by no tropics? No tropics?
So, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the movie Limitless, which makes them seem it's unrealistic, but in the movie, he takes a pill and it like ridiculously increases his IQ and turns him
Oh,
into this
okay.
like incredibly, obviously unrealistic level of genius. But it gets the point across of a nootropic. So a nootropic is a compound that assists your cognitive abilities,
So it really does
and in
do
some
that.
ways they can. What's that?
So that really can
No,
happen to people. It's not just
well, I mean, not to Hollywood level, maybe, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely even something as innocuous or as commonplace as say caffeine, right? So, I mean, caffeine has mild nootropic factors in it. I mean, especially if a common nootropic stack, for example, would be caffeine mixed with L-theanine. L-theanine is amino acid, so you get the energy from the caffeine, but the theanine keeps you from getting like the jitters and keeps you from
wow.
like a lot of times you're like we all know what it's like to overdo it on coffee. So then you're just like, but the theanine cuts that, and all of a sudden you can just
Interesting.
lock. And
Wow.
so
That's incredible.
there's tons of stuff like that. And everyone's body chemistry and brain's a little bit different. So like what works for somebody will not necessarily be as effective for somebody else. And these aren't magic solutions if your nutrition is crappy. If you're not already decent diet, decent sleep, decent vitamins, they're not going to fix that. But they take that to the next level.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. I love
so
it. I love it. So you said that this is information that people can find on your website, or is this in a book?
I have some of this is in my emails. Like,
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
yeah, if they just sign up for my email list, most of my information is free. It's in my emails,
Okay.
besides the free guides. I have a couple of books and a couple of paid guides, but I put it all in the emails mostly. There's a 7-day crash course, and then after that, there's an email every 3 days about something in the sphere of performance, like being a
Wow.
player.
Okay. So
Whether
everybody
it's
needs to
like,
get on your list.
so I don't know. I'd be interested in everyone's feedback. There's a little survey that people can take and tell me whether it sucks or not. Give it to me straight. It's just stuff that I've picked up over decades of being interested. I have a widely varied background. I did some medical research. Like I said, I was quasi professional athlete, and then biology background as well. So some toxicology. I have this odd background that just kind of coalesced into all this, and now I just brain dump it onto people that have subscribed. So
I love it. It's so good.
and pick and choose what works. Not everybody needs everything. I've stood on the shoulders of giants for sure. So. But you can't beat just the core basics that I outline in that free guide
Okay.
about basic stuff for not to eat, getting enough sleep, enough water, some vitamins. This, like you said, there's so much glorification in that like hustle culture. There is never a reason to miss sleep. Like your
Yes.
performance the
Thank
next
you for
day
saying
is
that.
it's always going to take the hit is so bad. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, every study will confirm this. There's just the whole cramming. It doesn't work. I feel like that's one of the things that people with side hustles and stuff like that, maybe they're doing their 9 to 5 or what have you, and then staying up super late and then trying to. I mean, you can do it for a short period of time, maybe, but it doesn't work for very long. It's better to use your time, like you were saying, a couple hours per day. It's better to use that efficiently as opposed to trying to make more time and
Mm,
sacrificing sleep or
yes.
basic exercise or stuff like that. So,
Great
um,
advice. Wow.
yeah, take
Thank
care of
you.
yourself.
Wow.
So,
This has been so awesome.
so
And I'm sure we could talk for days on all of this because you just seem like a wealth of knowledge. And I want to respect your time. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule as a $30
yeah,
million business owner
oh, no
to,
worries.
to
Thank you.
talk to us and share your wisdom with us.
Oh, thank you.
Love it. All right. Well, if you want to continue hearing from Victor Voss, I strongly recommend that you go to victorvoss.com and pick up the Player's Shortcut, the free guide that you can download, and get on his subscription list so he'll be sharing all of this wisdom with you.
Yep. Or if you think it's not wisdom, there's a survey to let me know how
Oh, there
bad
we
you think it
go.
is.
I love it. I
So,
love it. So good. So
so,
good.
so.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much, Latara.